playing any games. They need to pass this in the Senate, and they should not amend it. President Trump has said he would sign the Epstein Transparency Act. It's going to get overwhelming support in the House. It should go straight to the Senate, and it should be signed. No amendments, no adding loopholes. Justice is long overdue. And I want to hand it over to my colleague, Representative Thomas Massie.
There's a live press conference from Capitol Hill on the Epstein files. Vote expected today.
I want to start by thanking the survivors. I mean, they're giving everybody hope in this country. There are survivors of other sex crimes in this country wondering if they should come forward. They're clouded with shame and concerned that law enforcement will do nothing. And these survivors have stepped forth, taking that same risk, worried that they will be defamed themselves. They have been defamed for stepping forward, but we're going to get justice for them. That's going to happen today in the People's House. The founders set up our government with 3 branches and 2 branches of Congress. And I don't think it's any coincidence that this fight is being started and it's being won in the House of Representatives. I have people, other survivors of other sex crimes, who come to me and say, thank you. You give me hope. You give us hope. There is hope here. We fought the president, the attorney general, the FBI director, the Speaker of the House, and the vice president to get this win. But they're on our side today, though. So let's give them some credit as well. They are finally on the side of justice. And as Rose said, don't muck it up in the Senate. Don't get too cute. We're all paying attention. If you want to add some additional protections for these survivors, go for it. But if you do anything that prevents any disclosure, you are not for the people and you are not part of this effort. Do not muck it up in the Senate. So with that, I just want to say I am hopeful too. I didn't know that we would succeed when Ro and I started this effort. Most discharge petitions never make it, maybe only 4%. So we had long odds, but we had some brave women on the Republican side. My colleague, Marjorie Greene, is one of them who's here with us today. You cannot even imagine the consequences that they have suffered. My colleague, Lauren Boebert, and my colleague, Nancy Mace, they stood so strong. They put their names on a document in here, and then they were pressured in ways that you cannot even imagine. And they stood strong. And that's why we're here today. And they didn't take us seriously over at the executive branch or in the Senate, because they always thought they could flip one of these women. They could convince them or cajole them or intimidate them into taking their names off of this petition. But they did not succeed. This is a victory for those women and women all over the country today, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. With that, I want to introduce my colleague, Marjorie Greene.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Ro. I woke up this morning and I turned to my weather app to check the temperature, and it was 32 degrees. And my first thought was, hell has froze over. I want to speak goodness and love and hope into the women standing behind me and all of the other survivors whose names you don't even know, but stand with these women. They are survivors, and they are strong, and they are courageous, and they are daughters of God. They are not victims. These women have fought the most horrific fight that no woman should have to fight, and they did it by banding together and never giving up. And that's what we did by fighting so hard against the most powerful people in the world, even the President of the United States, in order to make this vote happen today. I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything, but I fought for him for the policies and for America first. And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me. And I want to tell you that this only became possible today because the American people whom we serve as representatives here in Congress demanded that this vote happen, and they put more pressure on every single elected politician in this city than has ever been put on them. And today you are going to see probably a unanimous vote in the House to release the Epstein files, but the fight, the real fight, will happen after that. While I want to see every single name released so that these women don't have to live in fear and intimidation, which is something I've had a small taste of in just the past few days, just a small taste. They've been living it for years. But the real test will be, will the Department of Justice release the files? Or will it all remain tied up in investigations? Will the CIA release the files? Will a judge in New York release the information? That's information that needs to come out. And will the list of names that these women privately hold, and they hold it because of their fear in their heart of what would happen to them if they release it on their own, will that list of names come out? That's the real test. So I want to thank Thomas Massie and Khanna for your bravery in doing something that is much needed in America, crossing the political aisle that has become bigger than the Grand Canyon in America. But these men crossed that aisle on behalf of these women. And that is more of what is needed today in America than ever in our history. So thank you so much. Who's next? Ro, I'll let you introduce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marjorie, Representative Greene, for your courage and your words. Before I introduce our survivors, I just want to say that they will make their statements, and then you can ask questions of Representative Massie, myself, or Representative Greene, but we do not want people asking questions and cross-examining the survivors. They're here to tell their stories, and they should be heard by the American people with respect. Of course, Congressman Massie, myself, and Congresswoman Greene would be happy to answer questions after that. With that, let me introduce the survivor who's helped organize a lot of this, and will be telling her own story and introducing the other survivors. Haley Robson, thank you for your courage and leadership.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Oh, good morning. A little chilly coming from Florida. Not used to it. I want everybody to take a look. I know everybody sees us today as grown adults, but we are fighting for the children that were abandoned and left behind in the reckoning. This is who you're fighting for. This is who Congress is fighting for. This is who the House of Representatives are fighting for. And hopefully the Senate will fight for us too. I want to kick this off right, and I want to address Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massie, and Khanna. I want to express my gratitude for all three of you, and I know, Khanna, we spoke earlier. This is an incredible thing that I'm watching as a Republican, and this is non-political, but for you to go against your own party and to be ostracized, there's no place for political violence, there's no place for intimidation. And I can say firsthand, stepping out against Epstein and his crimes against children, we have all experienced that ourselves. So for you to knowingly put yourselves at risk and put your career at risk is unbelievable to watch, and we are so grateful. I also want to make a proposition for Marjorie Taylor Greene, because you've been an advocate for this. If you decide to read those names on the House floor for immunity, I will be more than happy. No security needed. I will stand beside you. I will hold your hand. I will hold your coat in solidarity with you. And on top of that, I did talk to Jayapal, who said she would be more than happy to read those names too on the floor with all of us. It's time that we put the political agendas and party affiliations to the side. This is a human issue. This is about children. There is no place in society for exploitation, sexual crimes, or exploitation of women in society. There's no room for it, guys. We're not having it. And to the President of the United States of America, who is not here today, I want to send a clear message to you. While I do understand that your position has changed on the Epstein files, and I'm grateful that you have pledged to sign this bill, I can't help to be skeptical of what the agenda is. So with that being said, I want to relay this message to you. I am traumatized. I am not stupid. I am traumatized. I am not stupid. You have put us through so much stress, the lockdowns, the halt of these procedures that were supposed to have happened 50 days ago. The Adelita Grijalva who waited to get sworn in and then get upset when your own party goes against you because what is being done is wrong. It's not right. For your own self-serving purposes, this is America. This is land of the free. Land of the free. In 1863, we have a woman on top of the Capitol building represent freedom. I do not feel free today. I don't know if the women behind me feel free today. So I am begging every member of Congress, every representative to step up and choose the chaos, choose the survivors, choose the children, protect the children, all children. You protect all of us equally. Thank you very much for your time. Following that, Lisa Phillips will be the next survivor.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Phillips. It's an honor to stand here again for something America is finally united on: the immediate release of the entire Epstein files. In a divided nation, this is one demand we all share. Last time I stood here, I made a promise to all survivors watching. If those in power refused to release the truth, we would start uncovering it ourselves. For anyone who doubted that, that moment has already arrived. Since that day, more survivors across the country and around the world have reached out: text, emails, DMs, firsthand accounts, and evidence. Many are women who were abused or trafficked through the international modeling pipeline Epstein built, promising visas, apartments, opportunities, futures, while exploiting their dreams for abuse. Most are still terrified to speak publicly because the men involved are powerful. They're connected, and as we know, they're protected. For too long, survivors have watched others speak for us. And while we are grateful for our allies in Congress on both sides, we've realized something. This fight belongs to us. We lived it, and we know the truth. And we will not wait quietly for institutions to decide when we're allowed to speak. The survivors now coming forward have entrusted us with their stories. We are sharing that information with the proper authorities, and when it can safely be made public, it will be. So today, we are launching something historic: the first national survivor-led political movement in America. Nonpartisan, laser-focused on exposing the systems, the loopholes, power structures, and silencing mechanisms that have protected predators for far too long. We are stepping directly into the halls of power, into the political arena. We will help rewrite laws that failed us and build protections for our nation's children together, targeted by sexual exploitation. Together, today, survivors begin our own fight, the survivor revolution. And we intend to change this nation for the better. If you're a survivor who wants to join us, please reach out. And to anyone who benefits from the current system, intentionally or not, remember this: alone, yes, we are afraid, but together, we are feared. Thank you.
Good, good, girl.
everybody. I am Jenna Lisa Jones, and just as Haley, I would just like to give a little reminder that this was me at 14 years old. I was a child. I was in ninth grade. I was hopeful for life and what the future had held for me. He stole a lot from me by at 14. So just a little reminder there for everybody. Sorry. So, I just want to start out by saying thank you for all of you for being here today. I want to start by expressing my deepest gratitude to the members of Congress who have stood with us, the survivors, in demanding the transparency and justice. Your support is a signal that this institution can still serve the American people. This issue was never one that should have divided us the way it has. In fact, it should have united us. Sexual abuse is not a Republican issue. It is not a Democratic issue. It is also not a hoax. We are here as American survivors of a man who used his wealth and power to hurt young girls and women. The world should see the files to know who Jeffrey Epstein was and how the system catered to him and failed us. Emotionally, this process has been distressing. First, the administration said it would release everything and applauded President Trump for that. Then it fought to release nothing. Now that checks and balances of our democracy have worked and the bill is getting passed to release the files, we are hearing the administration say they intend to investigate various Democrats who were friends with Epstein. I beg you, President Trump, please stop making this political. It is not about you, President Trump. You are our president. Please start acting like it. Show some class, show some real leadership, show that you actually care about the people other than yourself. I voted for you, but your behavior on this issue has been a national embarrassment. It is time to take the honest, moral ground and support the release of these files, not to weaponize pieces of the files against random political enemies that did nothing wrong, but to understand who Epstein's friends were, who covered for him, what financial institutions allowed his trafficking to continue, who knew what he was doing, but was too much of a coward to do anything about it. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were able to recruit and abuse young girls and women. Then the country will learn nothing, and has horrible history will repeat itself if we do not do something about this. Thank you to the brave congressmen and women who have stood by us and recognized our side is the American side, and we should all be proud once again to be Americans. I want to just extend my thank you so much to all three of you very, very much. The first time we were here, listening to the, people yell shame at you, and when she was here in support of us, really hit home and spoke some volumes, and I just very much appreciative of your support, and we stand by you. Don't let any of them bully you. We're here for you. Thank you, guys.
Wow. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming together today and taking the time to listen to us. Your presence means the world, and it shows commitment to understanding and supporting survivors and Americans. I stand before you today with a heavy heart. I originated from Brazil, and I came to the United States when I was 8 years old. I was only 14 when I first encountered Jeffrey Epstein, and my daughter is now almost at that age. At 14, the only things she should be concerned with are going to school, practicing at her cheerleading competitions, and enjoying her time with her friends and family. She should not have to bear the burden of worrying about being manipulated or exploited. At this age, she is still a child, and no child should ever have to face such threats. I also want to address a troubling statement made by a prominent figure on a major platform who suggested that a 14-year-old should not be considered a victim of pedophilia. This is a dangerous and incorrect notion. When we talk about how children at 14 should still be treated as children, I ask you to look at the young people around you. Remember when you were that age? Do you think you should have been responsible for being groomed? Put yourselves in our position when we were young. I'm here today not to just share my story, but to call on all of you to help make a difference. We need to support to push for the Transparency Act and release the Epstein files. Please reach out to your Congress members and senators and urge them to support this crucial legislation. The truth is something that we all deserve, and it is vital for safety and protection of the future of generations. Think about all the young people in your life, your daughters, your nieces, your friends. Let's stand together and ensure that they grow up in a world where they are safe and valued. I often wondered, why did this happen to me? And then I realized God only gives you what you can handle. I'm here for a purpose, and that purpose is to make a difference today. So let's stand together to protect our children and our peace. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to say a few things before I begin. My speech may not be great. It was thrown together last minute as I only came here, decided Friday, when one of us who has spoken several times decided she couldn't come because of the threats. She was too scared. So I want to say, when you threaten one of us, you're threatening all of us. Yep. We are together now, and that's never going to change. This is me at 16 when I met Jeffrey Epstein. Now I'll start. It is an honor to stand here before the American people. However, I shouldn't have to stand here at all. I'm here because as a child, I was pulled into Jeffrey Epstein's world, a world built on exploitation and manipulation of innocence and the protection of powerful men and women who believed that they were untouchable. Today, we'd rather be preparing for the holidays. We'd rather be at home with our families, baking with our children and decorating the Christmas tree as we try to move past this horrific moment that has impacted our entire adult lives. However, that's not possible because it's become something it should have never been, political and sensationalized. The truth is simple. We were victimized as children and failed repeatedly by the very system that was supposed to protect us. That's why we stand here today, to demand justice and accountability, not just for Epstein and his crimes, but for every predator and every enabler who participates in or protects abusers. The Epstein case was gravely mishandled consistently and deliberately over many years. Epstein could have been stopped decades ago, but instead he was able to continue his abuse, even during his sweetheart deal, yes, with his ankle monitor on and beyond. A deal that protected him and silenced us. While I was a child fighting to survive what happened to us, federal prosecutors were negotiating ways to shield powerful adults. And the failures didn't stop there. Our civil cases were met with hostile judges and delay tactics, intimidation, and PR campaigns designed to smear us in the public eye. We were treated as problems to be managed instead of victims to be protected. Today, something has changed. Individually, our voices were whispers. Together, they've become impossible to ignore. We are encouraged to see elected officials from both parties, thank you, come together and finally take action to release the files. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Good job. Yes, Ashley.
Good morning. My name is Wendy, and I'm standing here today with a truth that still scares me to say out loud. I'm going to put this down because I can't hold both, as you guys saw, but that was me when I was 14 when I met Jeffrey Epstein. None of us here signed up for this political warfare. We never asked to be dragged into battles between people who never protected us in the first place. We are exhausted from surviving the trauma and then surviving the politics that swirl around it. When survivors travel to speak, to advocate, to stand for the truth, we do it with our own money, from our own pockets, carrying our own fear, shaking in our own bodies. There is no team, there is no paycheck. It's just us hoping our voices make a difference. And it puts a pit right in your stomach because you know you're standing on the right side of history.
Yes.
But standing on the right side of history is not a comfortable place to be.
Yep.
It never has been. And in a sick, heartbreaking way, it's an honor to show up, an honor to speak here, and an honor to stand in light where when the world tried to keep us in the dark. And what keeps me standing is, even with all this fear, I have a 14-year-old daughter myself, the same age I was. And when I look at her, I see the little girl I used to be, the one that no one protected. My greatest fear in this entire world is history repeating itself. And I will do anything, absolutely anything, to make sure that she has to never be one of these girls standing in front of a crowd like this today in her life. So today, from the safest and bravest places inside myself, I am asking Congress, please pass the bill. Please release the records. Stop making survivors fight alone for the truth that should have protected us in the first place. To the representatives that support us, thank you. Thank you for standing beside survivors so we don't have to face this fear alone. Thank you for choosing what is right over what is easy. And every survivor who is scared right now, your fear is real. Your courage is real. And even though we're terrified, we keep showing up because someone has to tell the truth. Someone has to protect these children. We deserve safety then. We deserve it now. And we are done being afraid so others can stay comfortable. So with that, I want to say thank you guys for having us. And I just hope that people can remember that as survivors, our story never leaves us, but the choice that you make to pass this bill, your career is in front of you, and that choice will follow you. Everybody will know. So thank you.
Good job, Wendy.
Well said, Wendy.
You're incredible.
Hello, everybody. My name is Danny Bensky. This was me at 17 years old. Coming from the dance world, I was recruited in 2004 after a systematic breaking down where Epstein leveraged my mother's brain tumor scans. He threatened me to withhold care for her. He trapped me in a year-long cycle of abuse. The last time I was here in Washington, D.C., I talked about being a part of this beautiful mosaic of women behind me, and they are exactly that. They are a beautiful mosaic of energy and passion and love and life. I am one story of 1,000. You think of that number, 1,000. I spoke of how big our hopes and dreams once were, and I talked about how they were completely shattered at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Now I look at this amazing community behind me. They are survivor sisters. We are together. We stand together in this. And I realize that we are a representation of women across America. We come from different backgrounds. We have different religions. We are different races, different creeds, different ethnicities. We have different political affiliations. Some of us don't want to be political at all. And yet we stand here together for this cause. We're united in the call for transparency, complete transparency, to find justice. Justice for our younger selves. These pictures that you see, they're real people. I wish I could go back and give my former self a hug and say, this matters and it's going to change, and mean it. We are standing here for justice for the youth of tomorrow, and justice for those who are no longer with us, like the beautiful, brave Virginia Giuffre. We understand that the road is long, but I implore you to stay the course, please. Living in an age where you can get news in 10-second clips on your phone, I know that this is a big task for us, but it's a very personal one for survivors. It's a very personal one for us as a country. So I'd like to ask you to try something right now. I'd like everybody to close their eyes or soften their gaze just for a moment. And I want everybody to think of a child that is close to them between the ages of 14 and 18 years old. It could be your daughter, it could be your niece, it could be a friend's kids, it could be you at a former age, it could be your mother at that age. But really envision that for a second, 14 to 18 years old. Once you think of that person, I want you to think about what they feel like. What is their energy? What do they smell like? What sound do they make when they laugh? Really think about that child just for a moment. Now I want you to picture a pair of giant looming wooden doors and an overbearing marble landing. Those are the doors to Jeffrey Epstein's house. Do you allow that child to enter or not? If the answer is yes, you would allow entrance. You stand with predators. If the answer is no, then congratulations, you're on the right side of justice. Now you have homework. I am calling for the American people. You have homework. Call your congressional leaders. Call your senators. Please support this bill. Let's get it all released. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Annie Farmer, and this is a photo of me and my sister Maria Farmer around the time I was 16 and she was 25. That's how old we were when we were abused by Epstein and Maxwell. Survivors have repeatedly stated that our pursuit of transparency and justice is a nonpartisan issue. But given the political noise surrounding this case, I just want to remind people of some of the facts. In 1996, when my sister Maria bravely blew the whistle on this group by reporting to the FBI what Epstein and Maxwell did to both of us, they hung up on the phone on her, and there was no follow-up of any kind. Bill Clinton was president. In 2006, the FBI came to us, finally interviewed us, and asked us both to be witnesses against Epstein. We were very anxious, but we agreed. And then we didn't hear back from them due to their infamous sweetheart deal. George W. Bush was president. In 2015, when the DOJ was sent FOIA requests for Maria's FBI files, and they were denied, as they have been many times, Barack Obama was president. In 2019, when Epstein died in prison due to either negligence or foul play, Donald Trump was president. In 2023, Maria's attorneys sent a letter on her behalf to the government, requesting an investigation into the repeated law enforcement failures in this case, similar to what was done in the case of Larry Nassar. They declined to do so. Consequently, my sister filed notice that she would be suing the government for failing to uphold its legal, ethical, and moral duties in this case. Joe Biden was president. This year, after campaigning on a pledge to finally release the files, under Trump's second presidency, the DOJ announced they were closing the investigation into Epstein's co-conspirators, and then transferred Ghislaine Maxwell into a prison camp, where it is well documented that she is receiving special treatment. This is not an issue of a few corrupt Democrats or a few corrupt Republicans. This is a case of institutional betrayal. Because these crimes were not properly investigated, so many more girls and women were harmed. My sister, because of her bravery, was repeatedly threatened and lived in fear, with dire consequences for her health and her career. 30 years later, even as oceans of allegations and obvious truths have emerged, the government has still not chosen transparency. This is why we have all come together as one united voice to demand the release of all the Epstein files and to finally bring the truth out of the shadows.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of Congress, and everyone gathered here today, I want to start by thanking the three of you. Thank you. It takes a lot of bravery to do what you're doing. We hear you. We see you. It means a lot for you to be here with us, and I know my sister would be incredibly proud. This is the moment she was fighting for and the moment that all survivors are fighting for. So thank you. My name is Sky Roberts, and I stand before you as the brother of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, a warrior, a mother, and a sister whose legacy will forever resonate in the hearts of those who understand the fight against injustice. Today, we find ourselves in a place of deep sorrow, shattered by the loss of our beloved sister. Yet, we are honored and privileged to carry her voice forward and continue her relentless fight alongside her fellow survivor sisters. Virginia's story is one that should have been filled with promise, but instead it became a harrowing tale of exploitation and survival. At just 16 years old, she took a job at Mar-a-Lago, believing she had secured a dream summer position. But that dream quickly morphed into a nightmare when Ghislaine Maxwell preyed upon her innocence. This isn't just the story of one girl. It's a story about the insidious nature of power and abuse, a dark chapter in our society that must be told. Virginia was no stranger to trauma. In her memoir, Nobody's Girl, she shares the painful truth that she had already suffered abuse at the hands of our father and a family friend. But what happened next was unfathomable. Epstein and Maxwell didn't just abuse her, they trafficked her to a network of the rich and powerful. Princes, prime ministers, politicians, financiers, and lawyers. These men committed unspeakable acts against her will, and against the will of countless survivors who stand united with us today. Virginia's strength was tested in many ways that most of us can hardly imagine. She was manipulated, coerced, and threatened, forced into complicity in her own devastation. She often spoke of psychological scars that ran deeper than the physical ones. From the start, she wrote, "They manipulated me into participating in behaviors that ate away at me, eroding my ability to comprehend reality and preventing me from defending myself. The most destructive wound they inflicted was that of forced complicity, a betrayal of self that was crafted by her abusers. But I stand here today to declare that their tactics of fear and intimidation did not work. Virginia's spirit could not be broken. She became a beacon of hope, a warrior, fighting not just for herself, but for every survivor who suffered in silence. She said, I felt it was my duty to stand up to predators like Epstein and Maxwell. I would put my neck on the line to make sure my daughter never has to go through what I had to endure. These survivors like Virginia have transformed into mothers and strong women, fierce in the face of adversity. Many of them have daughters the same age they were when they faced their own abuse. They are determined to break the cycle, to shatter the silence that has kept so many in the shadows. Virginia quoted in her memoir, "There I was, as the mother of 3 children. I felt it was my duty to stand up to predators like Epstein and Maxwell. I mentioned to Ellie in particular, her daughter, I would put my neck on the line to make sure she never has to go through what I had to go through. I said, joining Edward's CVRA case, said what I would want somebody to do for my daughter or sister and friend. In the end, I said, I was just trying to do the right thing. That's what I felt like I'm doing," I said. "I'm making a small dent in this big world we live in. Well, Sissy, you didn't just make a small dent. You made a monumental impact, a resounding statement that echoed across the world. You built an unbreakable wall, a barrier that will protect future generations from the horrors of abuse. As we gather here today, I urge each of you, members of Congress, advocates, and all those who hear this message to join us in this fight. We demand justice, accountability, and support for survivors. And we keep getting asked this. What does justice mean, you ask? It starts with acknowledgement. That's the first step. Acknowledge in the face of survivors that this happened and that this is true. Your vote carries that weight. My sister is not a political tool for you to use. These survivors are not political tools for you to use. These are real stories, real trauma, and it's time for you to stop just talking about it and act. Vote yes. Virginia's legacy is not just hers. It belongs to all of us who stand against injustice. Together, we will ensure that the voices of survivors are heard, that the truth prevails, and that the horrors of the past are never repeated. Thank you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for standing with us. Together, we will not let Virginia's fight be in vain. Together, we will not let the predators win. Together, we will be the change this world desperately needs. Thank you.
This is a press conference of members of Congress and the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein on the day when a vote is expected to release the Epstein files finally.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein in 1991. I always share the date when I talk about my story because people rarely acknowledge how long this has actually been going on. And for too long, truth has been buried, survivors have been silenced, and powerful people have been protected. And today we stand in a moment that will decide whether our government still belongs to the American people or to those who prey on them. Because when mountains of evidence and decades of victim reports across 5 administrations still lead to sweetheart deals or no prosecution at all, this isn't just one case gone wrong. It's an institutional failure on a historic scale, and every member of Congress in this administration must answer for that failure. Millions of sexual abuse survivors know the pain of speaking up and watching the institutions that are meant to protect them look away. We're not alone in this. Epstein may be the headline, but the betrayal reaches every corner of our country. And if our justice system can collapse this completely for so long, then Congress cannot pretend that the system is working. Not for us, and not for the generations that will live with the consequences of what they choose now. One long overdue step towards repairing this damage is the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Because without transparency, there's no accountability. Without accountability, there is no justice. And without justice, democracy dies. Yeah. So representatives, you have a choice to show millions of Americans whether you stand with us or with the powerful predators that are counting on your complicity. Thank you.
Yeah. Good job. Once again, this is a press conference of the survivors of the Epstein, of Jeffrey Epstein
Good
on
morning.
Capitol Hill, in front of the Capitol, for the U.S. Capitol.
This is me. This was me. My name is Charlene Rochard, and I stand before you today not as a victim of rumor or conspiracy, but as a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. Far too long, survivors like me have been dismissed, silenced, or told that our pain was exaggerated or fabricated. Let me be clear. This is not a hoax.
Yes, it's not.
What we endured was real, and it has scarred lives across 5 presidential administrations. The truth has been buried in sealed files and hidden records for far too long. The Epstein Files Transparency Act is not just about survivors. It's about America itself. How can we keep America great if the principles the nation was founded on, that power belongs to the people, is not protected? No one, no matter how wealthy and well-connected, stands above the law. If we cannot face the truth, then we betray the very ideals that defines us as a country. By passing this act, Congress has the chance to prove that truth matters more than privilege, that justice matters more than influence, and that America has the courage to confront even the most uncomfortable realities. This is not just about survivors. It's about every American who believes in accountability, fairness, and the promise of justice. I stand here today not only for myself, but for every survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse who has carried this burden in silence, and for every citizen who believes that justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes.
I want to thank Representatives Khanna and Thomas Massie for standing with us. Thank you. And I especially want to thank Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Her unwavering support, her courage to stand with us and demand transparency gives us strength. It shows that this fight for accountability is bigger than politics. It's about humanity, justice, and truth. This is about America's future. It's about whether we, the people, will be heard when we have the courage to stand for truth and justice. Our voices are real. Our pain is real. And our demand for justice will not be silenced. Thank you.
And this is the Epstein Files press conference on Capitol Hill. Live on Capitol Hill today in front of the U.S. Capitol, survivors of Jeffrey Epstein.
My name is Laura Bloom McGee. This is my first time speaking publicly about my abuse. As a young woman in New York City, I was pursuing a modeling career and building a life of giving back through my philanthropic work. Instead, I was intentionally groomed and became part of an international model sex trafficking ring that was led by Jeffrey Epstein. I was sexually and mentally abused by Jeffrey Epstein. He used my dreams and vulnerabilities to silence me. Today, I am here to break that silence. Sex trafficking and sexual abuse are crimes against human beings, not political talking points. For too long, Epstein's abuse was an open secret, with his network remained protected. Evil thrives in darkness. We must shine a light on every corner where it hides. Nothing should be off limits in the search for truth. Please vote that everything in the files be released. Let investigations proceed without obstruction. Demand oversight and deliver justice. The government must never side with predators. I come as one survivor, but I stand here for everyone who prayed for me, who believed in me, and who hoped for me. To my fellow survivors, your courage brought me here. We are more than victims. We are mothers, daughters, sisters, friends. This is not a hoax, and we will not be erased. Shame on any elected official who obstructs truth and justice for the American people. Thank you.
Amen. Yeah, girl.
My name is Liz Stein. In 1994, I was a senior in college, just 21 years old. I had aspirations of attending law school after graduation, and it looked like I had a bright future ahead of me. 1994 was also the year I met Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. My involvement with them changed the trajectory of my entire life. The Epstein files are not about loyalty to any one political party. They're evidence of a crime. We stand here today, victims of the crime of sex trafficking. I'm here today speaking both for my 21-year-old self and for the countless number of people who have experienced sexual violence. When I am asked what I would tell my younger self if I could say something, I say that I would tell myself to tell someone. And if they don't listen, to tell someone else. And to just keep telling until someone listens. And even if nobody listens to you, you should be proud of yourself because you stood in your uncomfortable truth when others could not. And that is true bravery. We stand here today as survivors, part of a sorority that none of us asked to join. We have told our stories over and over and over. Now it's time to see who was listening. We ask that you vote to release the files, all of them, so the victims of this crime can finally see justice. Thank you.
Amen. Yes. You go, girl.
Once again, a press conference of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. On the day the House is expected to vote to release all of the Epstein
Well,
files.
hello, everyone. And I want to first say thank you for your ongoing leadership. I know it must not be easy thing to do, much like it's not easy for us to be doing this. So I guess we're in this together. So thank you so much. I feel like our courage has, we're reflecting, mirroring courage, because that's what it takes to do this, right? So this was me at 22 years old. I was not a child, technically, very young adult. I imagine most of you here can relate to the mindset and to be 22 years old. So today is a good day, and I thank God for that. It's widely and undeniably clear that our current political climate is quite rigid and seemingly at war with one another. This sets a stage. This sets a stage for voices, survivor voices, to get spoken over and drowned out by the political darts whizzing by. Not today, though. Today, our truth and our power have steadily risen up. We're at the peak. Our voices prevail today. Our voices initiated the coming together of both political parties. That's pretty big, I think. Republicans and Democrats, we all stand together today. We all stand together for justice, and we must continue to do so to protect the integrity of our country and our democracy. Truth and justice must prevail. The children today are those that will lead this nation one day. Think about that. What does that mean to each of you? If anyone doubts that this does not directly contribute to the fate of our country and democracy, I challenge you and I urge you to think again. Our voices are a fundamental pillar of future generations. Today, that's what we stand here for. Accountability, action, and justice. Let's get this vote done today. Let's send it through the Senate and straight to President Trump's desk for signing. I'd like to be there that day that he signs. I'm sure all of us would like to be there. Today is a good day, and let's keep moving forward. Thank you so much.
I'm going to give you a hug.
Okay.
Hey guys, we're actually pressed for time, so we are not going to be taking questions. Going further, I bring back Khanna. He's going to do our closing conversation and comments.
Well, thank you, Hilly. Teresa is right. It's pretty big what the survivors have accomplished today. And I just want to say how eloquent, strong, and admirable they were. Let's give them a round of applause for their courage. Thomas and Marjorie and I will take a few questions from people. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, wow.
That's been a red herring all along. The survivors have always been in favor of this legislation, and there's a provision in there you can read if he would just read it that protects them. Now, if he wants to offer more protections in the Senate, that's fine with us. But here's the problem: now we have to vote on it again in the House, and so as you heard, justice delayed is justice denied. It could be just another delay tactic, but we want to. I think the speaker wants to save face. He's going to vote for a piece of legislation today that he's disparaged for 4 months.
Right.
And if, however, he needs to come on board, we want him on board. So we appreciate that.
This is Rep. Thomas Massie, Kentucky, Republican.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, you know, there's becoming a reckoning in Britain that needs to happen in the United States. A prince lost his title. The ambassador to the United States lost his job. We need to see those same kind of consequences here. As my colleague Rose said, there shouldn't be buildings named after these perpetrators of these heinous crimes. There shouldn't be scholarships named after them. And there needs to be accounting. We've seen tens of thousands of pages released by the Oversight Committee. What we've not seen is a single name. So I implore you to look and see if we have true justice and transparency in here. And the survivors will know when that has happened.
And I do think that Prince Andrew does need to come and testify at our Oversight Committee, and that can be bipartisan. But I share Thomas's view that the urgency that the British people have shown in getting justice needs to inspire an urgency here in America. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You don't need legislation to get the files released. President Trump could just release them today.
Well,
Is that frustrating?
No kidding.
And also, did you ask him to be here today? It's a really powerful moment.
Look, I'll let my colleague speak. I hope the president meets the survivors, and I hope when he signs the bill, the survivors are there. I don't care if I'm there, Thomas Massie is there, Representative Greene's there, but the survivors should be there. But I hope he meets them, because I think if anyone who meets them and sees their emotion will be moved. And my goal is to get justice here. So I hope he will meet them and really hear what's happened and actually take action. But the broader point is, yes, the president could order the Justice Department to release the files. But what in a constitutional democracy, what we're supposed to have is Congress says that the files should be released, and then it's not on the whim of any president. then the Justice Department is compelled to release those files because that's the law of the land.
Let's just take a, yeah. Take- So Senator Merkley is a Democrat. He's led the exact same legislation that Roe and I introduced in the House. One Republican co-sponsored his bill yesterday, and I have spoken to at least one more who says they will co-sponsor.
Wow.
The important thing about the Senate is that they need not to muck this bill up. There's a lot of attention on here. We've needlessly spent 4 months dragging this out. A representative, a duly elected representative, was denied her seat in Congress for 49 days.
Right.
And it's time to pull the Band-Aid off. The Senate, it may be tempting for them to get cute and to do things that will limit the release of these documents. They are afraid that people will be embarrassed. Well, that's the whole point here. They need to be brought to justice, and embarrassment is no reason to stop it. So the Senate, John Thune, it's up to him. He needs to bring this to the floor of the Senate. And I think the vote today will show that in the House.
And the president, look, the president has said he would sign the bill. You're going to get almost a unanimous vote here. So you have the president and a unanimous Congress believing that this protects the survivors and is calling for the release. There's no reason for the Senate now to, as Representative Massie puts it, muck around with it. They need to put it up, have a vote, have the president sign it. If there's any further protections, they can do that through the DOJ process. But what they should not do is delay a vote on a bill that the House is going to vote overwhelmingly for and that the president supports.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Councilman Greene, you raised the question of whether or not the Justice Department will actually release these files. Do you take the president at his word when he says he's going to sign this bill? And do you have confidence that these files will actually be released?
I only take people's actions seriously, no longer words. And I'll tell you, because I wasn't a Johnny come lately to the MAGA train. I was day one 2015, and there's a big difference in those Americans and those that decided to support President Trump later on. And I'll tell you right now, this has been one of the most destructive things to MAGA is watching the man that we supported early on, 3 elections, for people that stood hours, slept in their cars to go to rallies, have fought for truth and transparency and to hold what we consider a corrupt government accountable. Watching this actually turn into a fight has ripped MAGA apart.
Right.
And
wow.
The only thing that will speak to the powerful, courageous women behind me is when action is actually taken to release these files, and the American people won't tolerate any other bullshit. That's where we are today. Thank you.
Wow.
Go ahead. Last, 2 more questions, and then we're around all day. I would say that these survivors have been fighting for decades, and they finally are being heard by the American people. And we're finally going to have a reckoning for this Epstein class that has gotten away with horrific things. Look, I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. People went to church, they played Little League, they went to their neighbors for barbecue. They didn't go to a rape island and abuse young girls or traffic young girls. And people with extreme wealth have thought that the laws don't apply to them, and their culture is totally out of touch with the values that built America. And finally, we're going to have a reckoning over it.
Let's take the lady here.
Let me ask you this. You said you wanted this to go straight to the Senate. What message does it send to the survivors behind you if the Senate doesn't adequately move this bill forward?
Well, they're not here. They're not going to answer questions, so I'll answer a question. I prefer, actually, it goes straight to the president. He can release these files without the Senate acting. Sometimes they take a long time to get things done. The House figured out a way to take 4 months to get this done. I think it's disrespectful to the survivors if they delay this. There's nothing more important than cleaning out the rot in this country. And this is rot, and it's not a partisan issue. And the senators need to get on this. Yes, the economy is important. Yes, international policy is important, but there's nothing more important than getting to this rot and cleaning it out. They should put it at the top of their agenda. There are 1,000 survivors. They can't open enough investigations to cover up everything that's in these files. And yes, it's true they can try to protect a few certain people or a few certain companies, but those investigations will eventually end. And in the meantime, there's not enough investigations to cover up 1,000 different crimes, 1,000 different rapes, 1,000 different sex trafficking instances. And this is not a moot point, even though they are doing that.
And once this bill is signed into law, any career official at the DOJ or the FBI who does not comply with the law is at legal risk. It's no longer just up to the president.
Look, we could have passed a simple resolution here in the House, and that would have been the end of it. Instead, we chose a very hard path, which is to get legislation, a law passed, which means it has to go to the House, the Senate, and be presented to the president. And that will have the force of law. They will be breaking the law if they do not release these files.
Thank you very much. Last question, and then.
I believe he's trying to protect friends and donors. And by the way, these aren't necessarily Republicans. Once you get to $1 billion, you transcend parties. You just assume you can pay off whatever party is in charge of the White House, whatever party is in charge of the House of Representatives. And this is about those kinds of people. I think he's been trying to protect them. And I think it also incriminates our own government. This is a complete and total failure of the justice system, as the survivors have witnessed here today to us. It incriminates the FBI. It incriminates our intelligence agencies. It incriminates police departments in West Palm Beach. And that's what has been protected by this, either willfully or unknowingly, and it's time to end it.
And I would agree with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene that what matters now is just the action. I don't speculate on what politicians' motives are or what's in their heart. The point is the American people have spoken, Congress has spoken, release the files. It's time for justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow. So that was quite a press conference there by the folks that are responsible for the Epstein files being released today. I see Michael Tracy out there. I don't know that you got a question in. At any rate, that presser right there is hours before a vote to release the Epstein files, all of the Epstein files, as a matter of fact. That's the key to this, all of the Epstein files, unredacted, seen by everybody. Whether or not something's going to happen before this vote to block that is unknown, but anything is possible in this environment. A highly charged political environment where there are a lot of players in here who do not want these files public, chief of which was, until 48 hours ago, the president of the United States, Donald Trump. There's about to be a press conference with the Republican leadership in the U.S. House. This vote is due today at 2 p.m. Eastern today in Washington, D.C. I'll be on Capitol Hill in the U.S. Capitol, observing that up close. And then I'll do a live tonight at 9 p.m. on the Epstein files. There are two news organizations, ProPublica and Mehdi Hasan's site Zeteo, that have created databases of everything that's in the Epstein files, searchable databases. Now, they're, of course, going to be adding to those databases once these files are released. By the way, the vote today doesn't necessarily mean that they're released, at 2 o'clock or something like that. What has to happen, actually, because this was passed procedurally as a law, what has to happen is the vote has to, the House has to vote yes, the Senate has to vote yes, the president has to sign it. The question is, will it get through the Senate? There was a lot of questions at this press conference about whether or not the Senate is even taking this up. You did hear Kentucky Republican Tom Massie, who is the chief orchestrator of this moment, if you will, happening, He said that there were several senators who are sponsoring bills that will effectively duplicate his efforts in the House to release the Epstein files. Behind them, of course, and taking questions and making multiple statements were the alleged, and I shouldn't say alleged because he was prosecuted in court, the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and found guilty. And so, at any rate, those survivors will be on Capitol Hill all day today. Of course, they just had a press conference. There is a slew of press events today related to the Epstein files, which, of course, is a surprise to absolutely no one. I'll probably be in person for some of these. This 10 o'clock presser that was supposed to start at 10, it is now 10:16 Eastern, features Speaker Johnson, the Republican leadership of the House. Speaker Johnson, Mike Scalise, Whip Emmer. That, of course, is not started yet. I have that on the screen when that starts. I'm sure he will get a bunch of questions on the Epstein files. At 10:45, the Democratic caucus in the House will have a press conference. Does not include Hakeem Jeffries, at least not yet, as listed here. Then Rep. Grijalva, whose time in the House was greatly delayed by the Epstein files, will have a presser at 11 o'clock at House Triangle, which, of course, is right in front of the U.S. Capitol steps. And at 11:30, the Hispanic caucus will have a press conference on the Epstein files, no doubt to talk about what happened to Congresswoman Grijalva and her being delayed, being sworn in as a member of the House, being delayed by the Republican leadership led by Mike Johnson. And then we have a presser on federal housing programs a little bit later. Actually, no, that's tomorrow morning. So there's like 4 press conferences today on the Epstein files. The vote is due to happen at 2 p.m. Eastern time on the House floor, or at least the first vote. Usually what happens is there's a two-step. So I suspect the second vote will probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of tonight, 8 o'clock or something like that. But I have not checked the schedule, so I don't know that for sure. But the point is, there should be a vote on the Epstein files today. And the question is, how many Republicans are going to defect and vote to open the files? Because it's not just going to be 3. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I should say 2. Marjorie Taylor Greene, actually, no, 3. Homegirl Nancy Mace from South Carolina is the 3rd Republican, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie is the person who really, like I said, the architect of this entire moment really is Thomas Massie from Kentucky. And so I gotta find out what's going on with this press conference. It's taking forever. I'm not sure why it's taking forever, but this presser should have started about 20 minutes ago. I will stay with this live until this starts getting going. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. Republicans usually pretty much on time. They may have been waiting to see what happened at the presser that I just left in terms of what everyone said. It's hard to tell, but usually they're pretty much on time. And of course, today is a day that they were not wanting to see happen. Mike Johnson has been dodging this vote for a long time. And when enough votes proceeded for the House to consider the question of opening the Epstein files, effectively Speaker Johnson was trapped and then did have to bring it to the floor. It is now on the floor. So that is going to again happen at 2 o'clock. Hello, Matthew. And and so we'll see what happens, but we are going to have a full press conference with the Republicans. I'm sure the Republicans are going to get question after question on the Epstein files, because this is something, again, they've been dodging this for months, for absolute months. They've been dodging this question of opening these files. And once again, I'm going to put in the chat the 2 links to the databases, the Epstein file databases that certain news organizations are creating so they make these files searchable. So that's a huge help, because then you don't have to actually read these things word for word. And they come in some very unusual, formats. The formats are very hard to read. It's sort of like reading a gigantic legal document. But ProPublica, one of the best news organizations in the country, I would say the best in terms of the not-for-profit groups that are out there. They are outstanding in terms of the content that they put out. ProPublica has put together a database on the Epstein files. ProPublica loves a database. They have a 990 database. They have all sorts of databases. So it didn't surprise me that they threw up a database on the Epstein files. They are the kings of investigative journalism, and ProPublica is unbelievable in terms of their ability to get voluminous amounts of information up that everybody can peruse. And this is a very huge set of documents, the Epstein files. There are journalists out there who've been working on the case of Jeffrey Epstein for years and years and years and years. Those journalists, you can't do it. You can't do it all by yourself in terms of something like a database. But I suspect when these files get released, once again, they won't necessarily be released today unless something unusual happens. What's supposed to happen today is the House will likely pass a bill to open the files, release all the files publicly, and then the Senate has to consider it, and then President Trump has to sign it. President Trump in the last 48 hours has said that he is going to sign it, but President Trump changes what he says hour by hour. So that is something that, you can kind of take with a grain of salt. You never know what he might say from one day to the next. But in this last 2 or 3 hours, he's saying that he is going to sign whatever happens and whatever passes out of the House and Senate. I for one will believe it when I see it. I think that he doesn't want this stuff out there. There's a lot of claims that there are some Democrats in there, and I think that that's quite interesting because if there's so many Democrats in there, you would think the Republicans would want the files out. You're not seeing that. You're seeing a lot of hesitation over these files. I suspect that there's Democrats and Republicans. And so, not sure why people are so afraid of the truth. I'm a big believer in files and documents. Documents are huge. Emails are huge. Text messages are huge. And I'm a big fan of this type of hard documentation. It's contemporaneous in these stories to verify what has happened and what has not happened. And, this is exactly the type of documentation that will shed a lot of light on the facts of these cases, what people were writing in real time, who they were communicating in real time, who was on what airplane and on what island in real time. That is what these files are likely to reveal. The things that we've already seen, like some of the documentation from last week, was pretty amazing. Jeffrey Epstein writing emails to Ghislaine Maxwell mentioning Donald Trump. There are reports that Donald Trump has been mentioned in the Epstein files over 1,000 times. I'm not sure that that's true. That's one of the reports that I read, but frankly, we don't know if anything's true until we see it. And I'm a big believer in seeing the full context and not just a few emails. Yes, Donald Trump was mentioned in a few emails. They did seem damning, but it would be helpful to see the full context of those emails and not just one email out of 1,000 and 2,000 in a long email chain. You do need to see the full context, I believe, before making any conclusions one way or the other. It is clear that Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were friends. That doesn't necessarily mean anything else, but they were friends. And being friends with Jeffrey Epstein is incredibly inconvenient, given the activities of Jeffrey Epstein. So anyway, the full release of the files should uncover a lot of information and put that information in the proper context so that people can analyze what the roles of certain folks were. Obviously, what we saw with Prince Andrew, the stripping of the titles of Prince Andrew would indicate that Buckingham Palace, and in fact his own brother, King Charles, believes that he was involved in some way that was not good at all. And the stripping of the titles, of course, would indicate that. The way they punish you in the royal family is they strip the titles and they make you move out of some palace or some location in England, which is exactly what they did with Prince Andrew. So that indicates a huge amount of trouble. And that is the type of thing that funny thing, Congressman Khanna and Thomas Massie did in fact, oh wow, I must be watching the wrong channel because I see that this press conference has in fact started. So let me see if I can find where this channel is feeding. At any rate, Thomas Massie and the gang indicated, look, we can't be naming naming things after people who are involved in these things. I couldn't agree more. Thank you to my producer. I need a channel that is on YouTube to share screen with to find this Republican press conference. I could set up a second camera, of course, to run it on my iPad, but quite frankly, it's a little bit easier to CNN. Unfortunately, CNN. Oh, I found it. CNN. Sorry, I found it. CNN. Here we go with the Republican press conference.
George ever made any noise about that at all. So it's fair for the American people to ask the question, why now? Why suddenly are they so interested? They have such an urgent interest in the Jeffrey Epstein matter. The truth is simple and straightforward and obvious for anyone who is willing to look at it objectively. Clearly, this is a political exercise for Democrats and a few others, sadly, and it is as deceitful and dishonest as their pointless stunt to shut down the government. Same ideology behind this. Democrats are trying to use the Epstein matter as a political weapon to distract from their own party's failures. And in a desperate attempt, they're trying to somehow tie President Trump to the scandal. President Trump has nothing to do with it. He has said himself he has nothing to hide. And that's clearly what they've been trying to do. They're trying to attack President Trump. This is what they've done. They weaponized the justice system over the last several years to go after him, and this is their latest attempt. And they don't have a platform or a principle to defend on the Democrat Party side, so they put all their eggs in this basket. And that's why you hear endlessly about Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. Everything's about Epstein. Now, this was an unspeakable tragedy, we said that. And we have great compassion for the victims. And I'm heartened that I met with the victims. Our House Oversight Committee members met with the victims, and they deserve justice. It has been too long delayed. Not just justice for what they were made to endure, but also we need answers on why it took so long for the Department of Justice itself to do that job under previous leadership. Republicans, meanwhile, are working in earnest to deliver transparency to the American people, and we're working to do that in a responsible manner that does no further harm to these innocent people and the victims who have been wrapped into this. There are a few key facts here that everybody needs to understand. First, I mentioned the House Oversight Committee doing its work. That is a bipartisan effort. They are already producing far more than the discharge petition even anticipates. Chairman Comer is our chair of oversight. Some of the biggest bulldogs in Congress serve on that committee, you all know, and I've mentioned this so many times. They have been on the Republican and Democrat side. They're deeply dug in. They've been working around the clock. They worked even through the government shutdown, and there were tranches of documents that were released even over that period. So far, by last count, it's over 65,000 documents, Epstein file documents that are now out in the public for everyone to review. That includes tens of thousands of pages from the Epstein estate. And that includes Epstein's flight logs, his personal financial records and ledgers, his daily calendars, and so much more. And none of that is even written or included in the discharge petition. So in other words, the Oversight Committee is doing far more than the discharge even anticipates. And the most valuable information thus far has come from the Epstein estate files. That was produced because of the work of the Oversight Committee that is doing that in a professional, robust manner, using the full subpoena authority of the U.S. Congress. From the very beginning, our side has been insistent that this matter must be handled very carefully and with utmost caution and care for the victims. We want maximum transparency. We have always been about that. We want every single person who had any scintilla of evidence that they were involved in the Epstein evils, they need to be brought to justice, and it should have been done a long time ago.
Wow.
We need to find out who those people are. But in the meantime, you have to remember there are real people's, innocent people's lives at stake here, and young victims who don't want to be dragged into this political game because it could hurt further what they've already endured. They would be made to suffer more harm if Congress is not careful in what we're doing. And unlike our very important work that's underway in the House Oversight Committee, the Democrat-led discharge petition would carelessly dump thousands of documents without proper protections for the innocent. I brought a chart in here this morning. I want to illustrate for you what we are concerned with. Now, I was a federal court litigator. The members of our House Judiciary Committee, Republicans in particular, have many of these concerns. You have Chairman Jim Jordan and attorneys like Chip Roy, who's running for Attorney General of Texas now. You have Brad Knott, who's a former federal prosecutor, many members on the committee. Andy Biggs is running for governor of Arizona. They're lawyers, and they understand that the way the discharge petition was drafted is haphazard and dangerous. This is why we have been opposed to this point, okay? And I could be here for a long time going through all the details of it, but the big concern we've all had all along is that the House bill, if it's passed in its current form and it was signed into law, it is dangerously flawed. And our problem and our frustration is there is no way for us in the House to amend it or correct these problems because the authors of the discharge will not allow it. And that's one of our great frustrations. Let me just very quickly, we have a legal document that the lawyers, we have all drafted to explain all this, but let me give you five quick, maybe the top 5 concerns about it, and there are more.
Wow.
But as drafted, the discharge petition, it fails to fully protect victim privacy. I'm going to read you an excerpt out of our legal document we put together to explain all this. Congress should give the Attorney General broader authority to redact all the victim information. The discharge doesn't do that. This would prevent the release of information that could be used to unmask victims who have chosen to remain anonymous. Now, you have some very brave women who have come forward and put their names and faces out there and done press conferences and explained that justice is overdue, and our hearts go out to them, and they are heroes. But you have as many as 1,000 women, by some of the accounts, who may be caught up in this. And the vast majority of them have not come forward, probably for obvious reasons. They don't want to be unmasked. But the discharge petition doesn't have adequate protections.
This sounds like a building argument to block the Epstein files from Speaker Mike Johnson.
Courts have recognized this concern, by the way. I'll read you a quick excerpt. On August 20th of this year, Judge Richard Berman, the Southern District of New York, issued an order denying the DOJ's request to release Epstein grand jury materials, noting, quote, names and identifying information of victims appear in the subject materials, unquote. Judge Berman then quoted a letter related to the victims' concerns, which stated the following, quote, transparency cannot come at the expense of the very people whom the justice system is sworn to protect, unquote. And importantly, the judge quoted a letter from one of the victims. In the proceeding, she is named as Jane Doe 2. She said this is one of the victims, quote, I beg the court to make sure it is of the utmost priority that in any sort of release, all and every detail that could possibly reveal our identities be redacted. The victims of Epstein's evils deserve that protection, and the discharge does not currently provide. Okay. Number 2, the discharge petition could create new victims. Okay. Because it requires the DOJ to release information even in cases where the DOJ or the FBI has already reviewed it and determined it is not credible. It is false information. Doing this and requiring this to come out could ruin the reputations of completely innocent people, such as those who have may just have known Epstein but knew nothing of his crimes, or whose names he exploited. Think of this, innocent people whose names he exploited and used to try to get close to his intended victims. Their names may be in these files, and they had nothing to do with this. And so by just haphazardly releasing it, you're going to destroy their reputations. Releasing information containing the names of innocent people would subject those innocent people to a guilt by association. It would create an entirely new group of victims who have no means to clear their names. That's a concern of Congress, and it should be. Number 3, the discharge in its current form fails to prohibit the release of child sexual abuse materials. That is a term of art. It's called CSAM, okay? It's defined in the U.S. Code. The discharge is so haphazardly written because, remember, it's just a political exercise for these guys. They don't seem to care about this, but they cited the wrong section of the U.S. Code. So when they say that we don't want child pornography to come out, child sexual abuse materials, of course, we don't want that released. They wrote this thing so quickly that they cited the wrong section. So you know what that means? It means that it doesn't really bestow any real legal authority on the Attorney General to redact those materials. And that would compel the DOJ to release that stuff into the public. Every single person in this room knows that's wrong, and you should stand against it. But that's what the discharge says. Number 4, it jeopardizes the future federal investigations of the United States. Why? Because the discharge only allows the Attorney General to redact limited portions of records that could publicly identify individuals who were promised confidentiality. In this scenario, you're talking about whistleblowers, you're talking about confidential informants who came forward and gave information and evidence in exchange for agreeing to have their identities not revealed. Violating confidentiality, imagine the chilling effect that would have on future investigations. Who's going to want to come forward if they think Congress can take a political exercise and reveal their identities? Who's going to come talk to prosecutors? It's very dangerous. It would deter future whistleblowers and informants. And the release of that could also publicly reveal the identity, by the way, of undercover law enforcement officers who are working in future operations. Dangerous stuff, and they seem not to care. And by the way, I'm going to remind you again, we went to the authors. We asked the authors of the discharge to change this, and they said jump in the Potomac, all right? Number 5, national security concerns, okay? The discharge requires the Attorney General to release within 30 days, quote, classified information to the maximum extent possible. This ignores the principle that declassification should always rest, and always has rested, with the agency that originated the intelligence. Why? So that they can protect their critical sources and methods. It is incredibly dangerous to demand that officials or employees of the DOJ declassify materials that originated in other agencies and intelligence agencies. I could go on. I won't be here all morning, but there's a lot of problems. There's also a lot of legal scholars, and I'm among them, who are concerned that that you've got problems with grand jury secrecy. We know Rule 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure prohibits the release of grand jury materials, but the way the discharge is drafted, you can make an argument that it requires all that to come out, and that is a serious problem. Grand juries are not adversarial, okay? There's no opportunity there for cross-examination. You can't disprove evidence. You can't challenge the evidence in any way. And if Congress goes in and breaks that seal and just starts releasing sensitive grand jury materials and allegations like that, it raises a risk that the grand jury process will be politicized in the future. And that's a whole other danger that we could talk about all day. I'm gonna wrap this up and just say that Republicans support maximum transparency. We always have. The President of the United States supports maximum transparency. You've heard him say it in his own words. But he has had the same concerns that I've just articulated here, and we've talked about that. All of us have had these concerns, and we understand that we have a responsibility to innocent people and victims that is not properly guarded by the discharge petition. And that's why we're so incensed about that. We've got to make sure that we disclose the names of anybody who aided or conspired in any way with Jeffrey Epstein. But at the same time, you've got to make sure that innocent people are protected. So we have to do this in a way that doesn't violate victim privacy, that doesn't create new victims, that doesn't disclose the names of any whistleblower or informant, that causes the release of grand jury materials or child sexual abuse materials, or undermines our national security. And I think everybody of good conscience and common sense would say, of course you have to do that. But here we are. So the discharge petition got its 218th signature, and it is going to go forward. It is going to pass because it only takes 218. And we know that the Democrats have disregarded all these concerns, and they're going to move it forward anyway. So all the people of good conscience here say, we've registered our concerns. We stated our opposition as long as possible, but we're also for maximum transparency. So what am I to do as a leader in a situation like this? I call my counterpart in the Senate, Leader Thune, and I talked to him through this with him and shared our deep concerns. And of course, they share those concerns as well. And so I'm very confident that when this moves forward in the process, if and when it is processed in the Senate, which there's no certainty that that will be, that they will take the time methodically to do what we have not been allowed to do in the House.
Wow.
To amend this discharge petition and to make sure that these protections are there. The authors of the discharge did not allow us to do that here. That's the rules here. But in the Senate, they can correct it. So under that circumstance, because of that, we know there's serious deficiencies. We know that the work of our colleagues in the Senate can address that and will. They're very conscientious and concerned, as we are, about all this. As we've insisted from the very beginning, Republicans are the only party trying to make a material difference in ensuring maximum transparency. Oh, by the way, I'll just tell you, I put the bill on the floor for unanimous consent last Wednesday night. And guess who objected to it? The Democrats, okay? If this is so urgent and they were so concerned about getting this done and seeing justice be done and all that, they would not have blocked the request. Okay, this is about politics. They blocked our unanimous consent motion to expedite their bill, and made us waste all this additional time so they could have a show vote today. Republicans are ready to get the job done, to move forward, so we can continue to get onto these important issues of dealing with what the American people demand and deserve for us to deal with. And so I want to leave you with this thought. Everybody should think long and hard about who here is acting truthfully, honestly.
Yeah, it sure sounded like he's made a deal with the Senate to block the file
Obfuscated.
when they get to the Senate, keeping in mind that the vote today, if it passes, which it will pass in the House today with more than 218 votes, it doesn't release the files immediately. Of course, it has to pass through the Senate and be signed into law by the President of the United States.
To have a political moment. It is the Republicans who are acting in good faith, and I believe the American people are going to see that and understand it. I'm going to vote to move this forward. I think it could be close to a unanimous vote, because everybody here, all the Republicans, want to go on record to show they're for maximum transparency, but they also want to note that we're demanding that this stuff get corrected before it is ever.
And also you can't be on record protecting pedophiles. Somebody's camera got knocked down, so there's that. You can't be on record protecting pedophiles. That's the other problem.
And that's what we really wanted to talk about this morning. Affordability issues are real, and the Democrats themselves created the crisis. Remember, over the last 4 years of the Biden administration, they spent like drunken sailors, and when you throw a bunch of new money into the system, it makes inflation rise, right? Republicans are ready and eager.
Everything's Biden's fault a year later. Isn't that interesting? Is Biden responsible for the tariffs that we're seeing while we're spending an extra 30 and 40 bucks on everything now?
Discuss our record-setting success and our continued efforts to bring back affordability, to lower the cost of living, to lower the cost of health care.
Okay, now he's talking about affordability. So what you just heard there,
colleagues who are leading the charge on this issue, and Chairman,
before he takes questions, which should happen in a few seconds here,
we'll speak with you, and Congressman Nick.
that sure as hell sounded like a long way of saying we're going to block these files even if they pass.
To our chair of our conference, Lisa McClain.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back. So let me start with this. House Republicans will not allow Democrats to distract us.
Yeah, okay. She's going to talk about something else, and if I was them, I'd talk about something else as well. They do not want to talk about the Epstein files. That presentation by Mike Johnson was a whole bunch of stuff that indicates that when this gets to the Senate is going to figure out an excuse to hold these files up. Of course, the pressure is going to shift from the House side of that building to the Senate side. And all those survivors of Jeffrey Epstein are going to go over to the Senate side and pressure these senators to release those files. All that who shot John that we heard about, oh my goodness, we're going to release the names and people's identities are going to be released and all that. The only identity that Mike Johnson cares about is Donald Trump. The only name that they care about being released is Donald Trump. They're using the survivors to hide behind that in a clear attempt to protect Donald Trump from what I don't know. We don't know what they're protecting Donald Trump from. Everybody says that, oh, he's not involved. He was just friends. They didn't really know each other. I quit being his friend at a certain time. Well, if all of that's true, then why do they keep trying to block the release of these files? I mean, that is the question. If, in fact, you are innocent, if, in fact, you haven't done anything, if, in fact, there's nothing to see here, why is it hard to get these files out public? That's a basic question. And I think that that presentation that we just heard from Speaker Mike Johnson would indicate that when this thing goes over to the Senate, they're going to figure out some way to slow it down and not release the files. Now, the difference is going to be all the energy and the press conferences and all that are happening on the House side. Again, right now, all of that's going to be happening on the Senate side the second this thing passes today. And it will pass, and it will absolutely pass with more than 218. I just want to listen for 1 second here to CNN.
Files back when they were in control of the White House and in control of Congress. That is one of the reasons that he points to this as being a point of political theater in the House. But there's big questions about what happens next once it passes the House. Johnson has said that he spoke with Senate Majority Leader John Thune about wanting to see some changes, for instance, trying to ensure that the victims' names and identities are fully protected. But it's still unclear if and when Thune will bring this up for a vote in the Senate. What supporters of this bill in the House are hoping is that having an overwhelming overwhelming majority support for this measure will pressure the Senate to act and pass the bill and send it to President Donald Trump.
And the other thing that will pressure the Senate to act is actual victims traveling over to the Senate side of that building. I can assure you that the pressure is going to be on. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, by the way, was absolutely correct when she said that the Epstein files is the thing that is splitting MAGA, splitting Trump world, because the question keeps getting asked over and over again, why it is that these files can't be released. Right. I mean, it just, and there's always some reason. There's always some excuse. There's always something. I'll be live tonight at 9 p.m. I'm going to stop this live in about 5 minutes because I have to go to the United States Capitol and watch this up close and personal. I'm a big believer in showing up in person and seeing things in person, because there are things that you learn in person in these hallways in the U.S. Capitol that you can't possibly see on television. But that was interesting. That was a very interesting press conference. I may come back. Let's see how long these other members of the Republican leadership speak, because when Speaker Johnson takes questions, he is going to have to answer some questions about the Epstein files. Let's listen to CNN for just 1 second. They have a guest here. Let me see. Let's see here.
In this whole process for the speaker to, come to Jesus. It's sort of, I grew up as evangelical. He's an evangelical, sort of like finding the Lord after the rapture. It's too late. It's happening. It's been taken out of his hands, and justice is moving forward. So these are all disingenuous concerns. I mean, my clients, the victims in this, have been demanding accountability for decades through every administration, Democrat and Republican. This is not about the last 4 years. It's about the last 40 years.
This is James Marsh, an attorney for Epstein survivors.
And all of these technicalities, after all this time has passed, and after the obstructionism that has come from the leadership of the House, that is falling on deaf ears. And I think the American people are smart enough to realize that it's a little bit too much, too little, too late in this process for him to now be, protecting the victims.
Yeah, this is an absolutely laughable set of details that just came out at this press conference from Speaker Mike Johnson. But at any rate, I'm going to wait until I do see that the other members of the Republican leadership are speaking at the press conference. When we get back to questions, I suspect Scalise and Emmer, I don't know whether Emmer will speak. They skipped over Scalise. He might not be coming to the mic. He might just be standing there. But when they're done, I'll turn the audio back up on Mike Johnson, because he's bound to get some questions, and they're bound to be quite interesting. This idea that all of a sudden, oh my goodness, we're so concerned and have all these concerns that we'd never heard before about the discharge petition process, and oh my God, what might be revealed. There is only one person that Mike Johnson is concerned about, and that person is, of course, the President of the United States, Donald Trump. That is obvious. There was a massive mistake made by the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, when she got out there and ran her mouth and said that, oh my God, we're going to release all of this and it's all going to come out. And of course it did not. And then her and Kash Patel had to do a big dance, and whoops, now we're not going to put it out. Yeah, because you guys messed up and told everybody you're going to put out the Epstein files, which, by the way, I don't know why they couldn't put out the Epstein file. Now they're coming up with all sorts of excuses as to why they can't come out. And now we've got charts and graphs which typically Mike Johnson does not have a bunch of charts and graphs in the press room there on Capitol Hill, going over why he can't release the Epstein files. And the wheels on this bus go round and round, and they never stop. They absolutely never stop. There's always some reason why the Epstein files can't come out. And, all of a sudden there's all this concern, and when this moves forward, we're going to fix these problems. No, they're going to delay putting this out, just like they delayed it in the freaking House. I mean, they delay it because there's something in there. Everyone knows there's something in there that they don't want public. That was obvious from last week's release when we saw the emails of Jeffrey Epstein talking about Donald Trump. That's what's got them scared. And I actually think they should be scared, because you never know what can come out. And when you start talking about emails and documents like this that are contemporaneous, you just never know what can come out. I'm going to go back to the press conference and welcome the Slim Overton of Portsmouth Coffee Talk. Got Portsmouth Coffee Talk in the house. Thanks, Matthew, out there for being the remote producer. And I'm going to turn the audio back up here, and I'm going to adjust the light. And I do think Mike Johnson is going to come back to the mic for questions at some point.
Thank you, Chairman.
They have just a cast of thousands at this microphone.
It is in 46 below is not as cold as it gets. It can get minus 70 or worse.
Cold enough for me.
You know, every product in America is an energy product.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let me just keep talking here. So, I mean, basically what we're doing up there at that stage is we're delaying the time to which we get to Mike Johnson taking questions from reporters. It looks like they've got at least 5 people speaking before the first question. This is a typical standard Republican tactic, although I won't say that only the Republicans do it, of having too many people speak at the press conference. And, you know, you're waiting. This thing started at 10 o'clock. It is now 10:51 Eastern, and the first question hasn't been answered, which is quite interesting. Again, let's go back to James Marsh, who's an attorney representing the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein.
That's within Speaker Johnson's purview. That's within congressional purview and the federal government. What did the government know, and why were they covering up so long? So I have very serious concerns about these exceptions for national security and foreign affairs. That may be what's in the files, and we need to see that.
So bottom line right now, very briefly, James Marsh, you represent these Epstein survivors. What do they want to see happen today and tomorrow in the House and then the Senate, and then when it goes to the White House?
They want to move this process along expeditiously, without further delays, without further excuses, without further technicalities. To have this bill, trapped in the Senate now for, 30, 60, 90 days past Christmas, into the next year, into the next crisis, right. To have Trump sit on it for another 60 days before he signs it. Maybe he'll veto it. Maybe it'll go back. We're talking about a year-long process. And then using the excuse of redactions and national security, we're going to have another 6 months of delay.
Right. Now, this is a delay tactic that you heard from Mike Johnson. And yeah, so it looks like every member of the Republican leadership is going to be talking at this press conference. What a surprise. Again, the more people who talk, the longer it takes. Let's see if Emmer is going to say anything about the Epstein files. I doubt that.
The Senate majority, instead of helping us secure our border, cut taxes, and make life more affordable for the American people, Democrats have shown time and time again that they're more interested in opposing President Trump and his successful agenda at every turn. But their obstruction and partisan games will not deter our efforts to deliver countless wins for the American people.
Countless wins, absolutely countless. At any rate, yeah, so the next speaker should probably be Steve Scalise, unless he spoke before I turn this on, which I don't know that he did. I don't think he spoke before I turn this on. I think he's going to be the next and hopefully last speaker before Johnson gets a bunch of questions on the Epstein files. Again, welcome to Slim Overton of Portsmouth Coffee Talk, who I saw over the weekend in Portsmouth, and whose show I was on last week. The show is on every Monday morning, Portsmouth Coffee Talk. And look, this is going to be an interesting day at the U.S. Capitol. I hope to run into our Virginia elected officials. I have a platform called Black Virginia News, so I will be looking for Congressman Bobby Scott and Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan. And I know what they're going to vote. They're going to vote for transparency and opening these long-delayed Epstein files. That's what they're going to vote. And so we will see how many Republicans will vote for that. That's going to be the interesting question. I actually suspect a lot of Republicans are going to vote for that, as a matter of fact. And that's just, the idea that this has got to be a big secret. Yeah, here we go with Steve Scalise, is ridiculous. Let's see if Scalise says anything.
It's good to be back. It's good to have the Democrat shutdown ended and the pain, the suffering that went on for way too long.
They really care about the pain and the suffering, which is why they're not fixing the tax credits for the health care, for Americans' Affordable Care Act coverage. So they're really concerned about pain and suffering over there on the Republican side. Notice the Republicans still do not have any health care plan or suggestion or anything else. And, we will see what happens with that. I suspect as we as we have people texting me about this because they can see it coming in. Just put this on Do Not Disturb. But at any rate, a lot of people are paying very close attention to the Epstein files, as they should be. People have waited a long time for this House vote, but this is only one step in a three-step process. And the first step is the House passing it. The second step is the Senate passing it. And the third step is the president signing it. I really have a hard time believing that that's going to all happen anytime soon or quickly. I think there is going to be some drama before that. I do think that Steve Scalise, who was at the mic, is the last speaker. Mike Johnson should be taking questions after that, although not for long. And I suspect those questions are going to be on Jeffrey Epstein. We will see.
Talk about this great energy agenda that
We will see. That want to talk about energy out there, but the energy in the room right now is for the Jeffrey Epstein story. Everybody's talking about the Epstein files. Everybody's paying attention to this, Democrat and Republican. It's going to be an interesting vote because it's an interesting moment in which the Republican caucus is going to do something that Donald Trump has not been happy about, which is the release of the Epstein files. He hasn't been happy about that at any point in this. And now all of a sudden in the last 48 hours, he's saying that, oh, I want this out and I'll sign it into law and all this other stuff. The problem is you can't trust anything that Donald Trump says. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. What means something is actual action taking place. And if they continue to hide these files and continue to figure out ways to dodge putting the files out, there's going to be trouble in MAGA land. There's going to be trouble on the Trump side of the equation. And a lot of unhappy campers and people have expressed their displeasure with the state of play with these files on and over and over and over again, as they should, because this is really making no sense that we keep bringing this up. It keeps coming up and somehow nothing gets released in the end. And there's a team of people out there not going to tolerate that, not for 1 second. When they say this is not what they voted for, they're not kidding at all.
on that agenda, obviously this week, it's going to be a very aggressive schedule, and we're going to continue to move bills in the future.
Yeah, they're talking about energy out here. But again, the first question when Mike Johnson steps to that mic is going to be on Jeffrey Epstein.
And that is the healthcare crisis in America.
Unless he picks a Republican reporter. Actually, I should preface that. Unless he picks a friendly reporter, which he probably will. That's been the thing for the Republicans now. We're only going to pick people who are going to ask questions, are going to be nice and questions that we like and that we can't, we're not going to get in trouble when we get asked.
Increase are evident. 80% increase in costs for families since Obamacare passed.
Now we're talking about healthcare.
As the Affordable Care Act has failed to work for families, Democrats continue to try to shove hundreds of billions of dollars more into that failed program and not giving relief to families, but giving COVID subsidies to insurance companies. That's what Democrats were fighting for. You saw President Trump today saying one of the things we want to do as Republicans is give those tax credits to families, not to insurance companies like Democrats want to do, but to give it to families. We've been working before the shutdown with our three relevant committees, Chairman Guthrie's committee in Energy and Commerce, Chairman Jason Smith in Ways and Means, and Chairman Wahlberg over in Education and Workforce. The three committees that work on healthcare policy to focus on legislation that would actually lower costs for families and give families options so they're not trapped in the Unaffordable Care Act policies that drive up their premiums. And so we've brought bills. We had some of those we talked about in the Working Families tax cuts that didn't make it all the way through the process. We're going to be coming back to that. We moved PBM reform last.
Yeah, they talk a lot, but the proof is in what are you actually passing and what are you actually doing for people? It's moving the needle on the economics in their life. And of course, the answer to that question is really close to nothing. As most people have known, the House has been out of session for 41 days after this shutdown delay in which they got into a collision with the Democrats over whether or not they were going to extend the tax credits for the Affordable Care Act, which the Republicans are not interested in. So everybody's health care cost under the Affordable Care Act is going to go up in January of 2026. Bottom line, no matter what Steve Scalise says up there, that is the bottom line. Again, this press conference has been going on for about an hour. and no questions yet.
Calendar for next year. So I know you.
No questions yet. This is the first real press conference after they've gotten back in the session after a long shutdown, the longest shutdown in history, and still no questions yet.
American families. We've got a lot to do this year.
A lot of talking. Got 5 people up there, but man, let's see if we can take a question on this, on anything, on healthcare, on Epstein, on anything. Can a question be taken at this press conference? Is the thing I'm wondering.
In this Congress to actually deliver for the American people.
They're not delivering anything for the American people. Let's just be real. Let's just be real. This is ridiculous. People think that talking means something. Talking does not mean anything. Action means something, and then that is it. That is the only thing that means anything, is action. Things that actually happen, right, and take place, not talking. Talking means absolutely nothing in politics or anything else. Now Scalise won't stop talking. Again, they're just delaying the time in which a reporter can ask a question, which is the whole point of having all these people up there talking. He'll probably, if he takes more than 3 questions, I'll eat my hat, but he might. Do credit to Hakeem Jeffries that does a press conference. He talks for about 5 minutes and then takes like a ton of questions. He just will take question after question, and he'll take it from any news organization, right, left, center. I'm sometimes surprised when Hakeem Jeffries takes questions from people he knows he's going to get a dumb question and a partisan question from a so-called reporter, and then he takes it anyway, and good for him. Let's see what happens with this.
Front row, go ahead.
The president campaigned on this idea of transparency. In the name of transparency, he released the MLK files. In the name of transparency, he released the JFK files. Why not, in the name of transparency, call on the president to just release the full Epstein files? He doesn't even need Congress to have this vote.
Well, the president's made very clear his position over the last few days. His truth post over the weekend and what he said. He had a press gaggle yesterday. Said the same thing. He says release all the files. He's been saying that. What he was counting on and what we were insistent upon is using the processes of Congress, as I explained here in great detail this morning, to do it in the right way so that it's not haphazard. And Congress has a role to do that. The Oversight Committee is the appropriate place for this to be done, and that is what is happening right now, as you've all seen. And so we preferred that route. And by the way, as I mentioned, that route is more comprehensive than anything the discharge petition would accomplish anyway, because it didn't even mention the Epstein files and some of these other things. The estate files. So we want the process to play out. We want it to be done in the right way. We want to do it in a way that doesn't jeopardize our legal system and doesn't inflict more harm on victims. And the president is resolute on that, as we have been. And that's why we opposed this gambit from the beginning. Yes.
Do you acknowledge that by voting for this petition today, that is a reversal for you, that you could have put this on the floor months ago and may not have even needed to have a discharge petition if you had supported it months ago?
No, it's not a reversal. As I just explained, we had big problems with the discharge from the moment it was filed. We talked with the authors. There was lots of people that went and pleaded with them to fix it so that everybody could be together, because we've been for maximum transparency. But again, there's a reason you have rules and processes here to ensure that this is not done haphazardly. And I was not satisfied with that. But I've been for maximum transparency from the very beginning. We wanted the process to play out. So, yes.
I understand.
Last question.
Concerns with the discharge petition. I also understand your want for transparency. In this case, you've been very clear on both those fronts for weeks. So is the reason why you're now deciding to vote for this resolution because President Trump directly said Republicans should vote for this? Because this has been your position all along, but you've made it clear you weren't in support of this resolution.
If and when the discharge reached the 218th signature, it'll be forced. And the forcing mechanism here prevents the very deliberate, professional, careful manner in which Congress is supposed to do this. I lament that. That's why I'd been opposed to it all along. But having now forced the vote, none of us want to go on record and in any way be accused of not being for maximum transparency. So the only intellectually consistent position to have right now, the only way to ensure that both those things are true at the same time, is to allow for everyone to vote their conscience and to go on record to say, of course, we're for maximum transparency. Now, I'll tell you, there's a handful of Republicans, Judiciary Committee members, and a few others who are really struggling, as I have been, about whether or not they could even vote yes today because of this, because we don't have an absolute guarantee that this will be fixed in the Senate. I have a high degree of confidence in that. And that's why, that's why I'll be voting yes today. And I've talked about that at great detail. We had a hour and a half long conference call on Sunday with Judiciary Committee members who are really, really concerned. I mean, they're all for maximum transparency, but they're really, really concerned about protecting the victims, and I am as well. And that's why we have gone through this whole long process. Last one, Olivia, go ahead.
They're looking at ways to send millions of Americans checks from tariff dividend revenue, but without Congress being involved. Do you have concerns about them not running that sort of process through?
Well, I'm not sure that's possible. And James Blair and I will have some intense fellowship about that, I'm sure. He's a good friend. We collaborate on strategy all the time. But this is an idea, I think, that makes sense. The president was talking about it as recently as yesterday. I think what I heard him say, and I haven't talked to him about it because he and I have both been so busy the last 24 hours. I'll see him in a little while. But I think what I heard him say yesterday is he's thinking about something maybe midway into next year when the tariff revenue is realized and we can figure out what that looks like. But I think it would require an act of Congress. So we'll have to see how. I'm not sure what's being proposed. So it's sort of a hypothetical. Last one. Yeah.
Reading through the bill, though, I guess I'm confused because the bill specifically says the Attorney General may withhold or redact portion.
Whoops. Whoops.
Anything jeopardizing federal investigations specifically says they can withhold anything containing personal identifiable information of victims, personal medical files. We know the survivors are comfortable with that. All of these things are actually in this bill.
They're not. Let me give you an example. And we could be up here for a long time. I litigated with you because I brought all this stuff. All right. Okay. So the first one you mentioned. Okay. So here's the HRS 581. This is the discharge. Okay. It says on page 5, redact anything that depicts or quote depicts or contains child sexual abuse material, CSAM, as defined under 18 USC 2256. Okay. All right. So you go to 18 USC 2256. Definitions of the chapter. Nowhere in this section, okay, go look it up, all right, does it contain the definition of child sexual abuse material. So I used to litigate federal cases and I would challenge statutes in court, okay? The language is very important and very precise. If it's not listed here and this were to become law, child sexual abuse materials are not included. They're not included for redaction, which means the Attorney General and someone there, if they interpret the discharge in the statute that it passes directly and literally, as they're supposed to do, they're required to do under the law, then you're going to have things that would qualify under child sexual abuse materials. You have child pornography included in the distribution of this stuff. We can't go for that. And why did the no, it's not up to the Attorney General because the way it's listed in the document. No, it's not. It's not because it doesn't reference the right code section. So we could go through every one of these things. We have had a small army of lawyers going through it because I want to make sure that all of my concerns, because I read it the first time initially and I thought, whoa, this is way out of bounds. We have in fact, we'll put on the speaker.gov. I'll put it on the website here when we leave. You'll see the summary of the legal analysis and it goes through point by point and it points to the specific sections in the discharge. Guys, we're not making this up, and you can take it to your counsel at your outlet's offices and have them review it, and they'll tell you the same thing. This should have been done in a much more careful manner, and it was not. And I'm going to point out again, when the authors were asked to fix it, they said they weren't interested in doing that. Okay, why? Because this is a raw and obvious political exercise. Again, I'm just going to leave you with this question. You should go ask them all. If you were so concerned about the Epstein files and protecting the victims, why didn't you do a darn thing about it for the 4 years of the Biden administration? All this stuff was sitting in a warehouse and nobody said a word about it. They didn't care. Now they're doing it. We all know why, because they're trying to attack President Trump. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, he can say that over and over again as much as he wants to. But the bottom line of this thing is that he does not want these files released. It is as simple as that. He does not want these files released. And he's always coming up with some reason as to why the files can't be released. At any rate, I will be back at 9 p.m. tonight live after whatever happens today. I mean, I'm starting to wonder what is going to happen today. That live I doubt it's going to be late, but the last vote is at 8 something. So, I will probably just do it right after that last vote. And when I look at the House schedule, I can see that the last vote is in the 8 o'clock zone first vote is at 2 p.m., but this is going to be very interesting to see. I think that what's going to happen is that Speaker Johnson, that man on the screen right there, is going to have a jailbreak of his caucus, and they are going to release these. They're going to vote to release these files overwhelmingly, and then the Senate is going to have to deal with the same question. And then all these reporters are going to go from one side of the building to the other asking, why don't you want the Epstein files released? And it's as simple as that. At any rate, I'm Lauren Burke. This is Lauren Live. Thanks for everybody joining from Twitch. And also, thanks for hitting the like button. YouTube is obsessed with the like button, I guess, and so am I. But I'm going to go to the U.S. Capitol and watch this up close and hopefully have some clips for tonight's show at 9 p.m. on what's going on. And this is going to be a very interesting day on Capitol Hill. This is one of the most anticipated votes in a very long time. This is Lauren Burke, and I will be back very, very soon.